Welcome back, everyone. This is Elevated Duty Podcast. This is episode 24.
24. And if you've been watching some of the old podcasts, you may have recognized Sergeant Rivera. And I think we've touched on it in some of the last podcasts about the future plan for you.
Yes.
And so go back and see kind of where the progression is for you right now. Officer candidate, future sir. How's that going?
Officer candidate, yeah. Second drill in. It's a lot of work. It's not easy. No, A lot of people, even a prior black hat, told me it's not going to be easy. And you'll see it. And yeah, it's tough, but we're hanging there.
Nothing that means anything should be easy.
Yep.
I'm super proud of you. I'm so excited to be able to salute you when you commission. I'm glad it's going well from everything I'm hearing. And Officer Candidate Rivera, if you go back and look at the podcast, you can see a big difference into our kind of new studio. So Thank you so much.
Yeah, people already, seeing a little bit of the changes, bigger logos behind us, lights. This is our anniversary podcast.
1 year.
1 year in. So, happy to be back. And, that was part of the gap we had.
Yep.
So we haven't posted a podcast since early January with Sergeant Parker. But we're back, and we're just gonna keep doing great content, and stay tuned.
Shout out to Recruiting Retention Commander. Lieutenant Colonel Enga was supposed to be our kind of 1 year anniversary, but we're so busy, all the time here in the Colorado National Guard, and so there's a lot of moving pieces, and we're happy to have you come back on, sir, as soon as your schedule allows for it. But to fill in a gap, we're not cutting it short. So this is a really important episode. I'm sure it's going to be a very viewed heavily episode. If you'd like to introduce our guest today.
Yeah. So the guest today is the funny thing is the second person I met in the Guard, because the first one was Ambassador Kuzma. And then the person here, Sergeant First Class Alex Klaus, was my recruiter. Yeah. Welcome to the podcast, Sergeant. How you doing?
Welcome.
I'm great. Thanks for having me on here, guys. Sergeant Rivera, or formerly Sergeant Rivera, brought you in from the reserves out in Puerto Rico. I think that was 3 years ago now? 2 years ago?
2 years ago.
2 years ago?
Going into the third year, yeah.
Okay, so we're celebrating that by just, throwing the rank out and just doing it all over again by going through OCS, man. We're super proud of you. I'm super proud of you. You've done a lot of great work in the recruiting battalion since you've joined, and it's a testament here looking at the studio, the effort that you've made here and the projects that you've built. This is the kind of stuff that's legacy, man. This is gonna stay for a long time. So thank you for your efforts, man, and glad to have you.
Thank you. And I don't know if you watched previous podcasts, but then that word legacy, we mentioned here with Sergeant Valdez. Shout out to Sergeant Valdez.
Yeah, he's doing great things.
Yeah, with
reached
Satke
out to us. He's overseas right now.
So he mentioned that, and he was like, "Hey, what's your goal?" He's like, "Hey, my goal is to preserve legacy." And once people look back and say who you were, where you were, and what you did, is you can look back into our files, archives, or whatever, and you'll find stuff that I made to preserve what we are as an organization.
And before we go into your story, Sergeant Klaus, for viewers that are watching or listening, current service members in the Guard or different organizations as well, for you, Officer Candidate Rivera, did you know that you're going to go to state OCS and go down the officer pipeline when you first joined?
Yeah.
You did?
Yeah.
So for those watching in uniform, if you're stagnant, and I know you can go back and look at almost every single podcast we talk about, if you're stagnant, if you are feeling that you need that new adventure, be the squeaky wheel and talk to your leadership. And there are so many opportunities to pick up a second MOS or a third MOS, or volunteer for training, or go become an officer or warrant candidate officer. So, yeah, we're super proud of you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Looking forward to what you're going to bring to the table in the future there, future sir.
Yeah. And that's the important part, what do you bring to the table?
Yep.
And, since, I was working with you, I kind of I already knew kind of stuff I wanted to implement into the Guard, and I'm happy that people like you, like Machon Kuzma, the commander, listen and basically tell, if you believe in it and you want to, put the work into it, just go ahead and do it.
Yep.
And, that's important because he also mentions like all the time, like ownership and basically, I take pride of what I do. And it's like, if I want to do something, it better be good.
Yep, and we talk to our applicants and future people coming into our organization, and we talk about the different compos, and they ask what the difference between active duty and reserves and the guard, and the best way we can kind of describe it if you're listening, and I tell everybody, and you can go back and see it in other podcasts as well, is do you want to go active duty and work for the military for an initial contract or your entire career, or do you want to come to the guard and let the military work for you and your lifestyle and your goals and your aspirations? We support it as long as you're doing the right thing.
Yep. And then now that you mentioned that, working for you, like when I started this podcast, I didn't have my own. I had part of the equipment, but then I was like, I have the equipment. I think I have the capabilities to do this.
Yep.
And I pitched the idea to the commander, but then I was like, hey, I might do this on the personal side, because, it's part of my equipment. So I was like, I'll use what I have and then try to implement here and there. Guess what?
And now you have your own podcast.
I started mine, and now I'm building my own studio.
Can we give I don't know if we're allowed to shout out, but can we give your podcast a shout out if anybody wants to go see Officer Candidate Rivera on the civilian side?
Yeah, Con Cafe podcast in YouTube is Con Cafe. It's like with coffee. It's in Spanish. It's more like about like stuff that is going on, like more like we started as couples podcast, and now we did a pause, and now we're revamping the whole thing because on here it's pretty easy to do a podcast. We sit down, I plug everything, and we roll.
That's awesome.
So I was like, I need to do something like that home because I didn't have a studio, so I had to set up everything. And that's I've been trying to implement that everywhere in my life.
Yeah.
And sorry, I'm taking time here.
No.
But it's because, like, let's say right now I knew I was gonna go OCS, right? I was like, I need. It's gonna snow all the time. I need to start running. I need to start doing stuff. So I bought a treadmill. So now it's like, hey, you don't have an excuse for not being running. You have a treadmill. You're indoor. You gotta be running. I bought a swim machine. Same. It's like, hey, so it was hard for me to drive from here all the way home and then get into my car and then change. And it's a lot of barriers in the middle of my workout. So I was like, I'm gonna take all those barriers out, and then there's no excuse for not being training. So like this morning, my dogs woke me up at 5:50. Guess what? At 6, I was already in my home gym.
Yep.
Hitting it.
That's huge.
So I'm taking those barriers out to do stuff. So I was like, why I don't do that with my podcast? Because right now, I wanted this project to start. Let's do it. Let's remove all those barriers. Let's build a podcast studio, and then that's so that we can do like content and bring value. Not like because we do couples like stuff like how we manage stuff, how we deal with stuff, but also bring like entertainment into people.
I've seen I've clicked on it and watched some, and if you can't get enough of Officer Candidate Rivera and you want to see him on the civilian side with your lovely wife who's active duty here in Colorado at Fort Carson, if you want to kind of see that civilian soldier lifestyle, right, go check out Con Cafe on YouTube. But today, so if you've clicked in here, the title, well, I'm not sure exactly what it's going to be yet, but something 519th Special Forces Green Beret, that's probably why you're clicking on this video. And so now we're going to pass it over. And before we get into what that means and Green Beret lifestyle and 519 Special Forces Group Alpha, correct?
Yes. So Air for Airborne.
Air for Airborne. So before we get into that, Sergeant First Class Klaus, can you please give us your background, your story, as much or as little as you want, from your upbringing, family, lifestyle, anything you want up until kind of where we are at today?
Yeah, absolutely. Number one, thank you for having me on the podcast. It's a pleasure to come talk to you guys, watch the podcast here intermittently when I can. And I'm just excited to be here to talk about who I am and what I do, and share the good word about opportunities here in the state.
Amen.
So yeah, I'm a Colorado native, so one of the few probably remaining here in the state.
Likewise,
Yeah,
with you.
yeah.
There's less and less.
Don't look at me. Don't look at me.
Oh, I know where I know because I enlisted you. So I've been in Colorado my whole life, born and raised. I grew up playing sports here in Colorado. I was a big tennis player, swimmer, so a lot of individual sports. Grew up in the outdoors, so I was a Boy Scout for a lot of my childhood years. So I started in 5th grade, made it all the way to Eagle Scout. So I did camping, climbing, backpacking. I spent my summers doing either sports or something outdoors.
Yep.
And that was really the foundation of who I was as a kid, and even to this very day, just very active, like to stay outside as much as I can. Of course, now I'm a recruiter, so I sit behind a desk and under fluorescent lighting, so sneaking my time outside here under the sun is very important for me. And now I'm married, I have a wonderful wife at home, Kelsey. And
shout out Kelsey.
Shout out Kelsey. Yep, she's gonna be watching this at some point, I'm sure. And I've got 3 wonderful boys. So I've got a 7-year-old, a 4-year-old, and almost 2-year-old. And every bit of my time outside of the military is soaked up by laughing, playing, adventures here with the wife and kids, and really, really the light of my life. So I'm very lucky and taking a lot of steps to get to where I'm at today.
So growing up, love the Eagle shout out, right? If you are a scout, we just did a breakfast with the Scouting America at I always want to say Pepsi Center, but it is the Ball Arena. Yep. Thank you. And so we were able to go.
Shout out aluminum.
Yeah, it was such an amazing thing. We were able to show up super early morning, but we had Charlie Blackman as a guest speaker there.
That's right. Yep.
Colorado Rockies. Now he's working with the organization, and so many leaders throughout Scouting America and the scouts that are involved. And so if you are in any aspect in Scouting America or the Girl Scouts, there are opportunities for promotion if you want to continue serving, because you're pretty much serving right now. You're serving your state and local community. You're doing a lot of volunteer community outreach with your pack or troop. And so it was so good to see that. But for you growing up and being outside and earning the rank of Eagle Scout and being in individual sports and pushing yourself, did you know military was going to be it? Were you dead set? How did that transition happen?
Yeah, great question. No, I was not at any point in my life considering military before the age of 18. I thought college was the way to go. Mm-hmm. I had 6 years of my life mapped out where it was to go to 4-year program at a Steamboat College, the Colorado Mountain College, and started up there. And college, didn't really work itself out for me. It just wasn't the right fit for me at 18 years old.
Sure.
So it was different because I had that part of my life mapped out. I thought that's what I wanted from the first stages of adulthood. I thought that's what I was supposed to do. And when it turned out not to be right for me, I really spent the next probably year of my life kind of figuring out where I was going to go.
Okay.
And when I didn't have a direction, because that's really what ended up happening, was I said to myself, either I'm going to join the military or get back into college and push myself to obtain that next part of my life. And, I didn't end up going to school. And so I went and joined the National Guard in 2011. I'd actually broken my wrist in 2009. I was actually going to be on active duty at that time. And so broke my wrist the week before I was supposed to ship out for basic training. I was on a longboard, of all things, so shout out Colorado and longboards. Took a nasty spill, shattered my wrist. I was an external fixator for about 6 to 8 weeks.
Wow.
And I decided that active duty wasn't the right fit for me at that time. And 2 years later, went and joined the National Guard, and it's been the foundation of my life since I made that choice.
And so you were, dipped your toes into college. You had an injury. I know you said that you were looking at going active duty. And so when you were pondering, remaining and continuing further education, who did you meet with? Did a recruiter on active duty reach out to you? Did you reach out and find them?
That's a great question. So I up and decided one day I'm going to join the military. I put in my information into the goarmy.com or the website that, whatever branding website they had at that time. And I believe I had a recruiter reach out to me 3 hours later. I mean, it was such a quick turnaround.
They were doing their job.
They were on top of it, as they should be, as we should be as recruiters. And probably the next day or 2 days later, I was in the recruiter's office and went up and took my ASVAB test and was scheduled to go get my physical done within the next week. So very quick turnaround.
Knocked out the physical, had the ASVAB done, and officially enlisted into the delayed entry program with active duty?
Yeah, and I think looking at that, so I was contracted into the DEP, but I think not technically enlisted at that time. DEP is a separate program. So you enlist when you ship to go to training. So I was not enlisted into a branch of service at that time. The delayed entry program is kind of like the holding place.
You're kind of promising to active duty, saying, I will ship and enlist when that time comes.
Exactly.
Okay.
I being married for 10 years, I always relate it to, giving that girl a promise ring here. Hey, I'm gonna marry you soon.
Good analogy.
But it's not today, right? And the DEP was that for me, and I had a ship date after the summertime.
And so you're in the DEP, and that's when you received your injury longboarding, right? I'm sure your recruiter was really happy to hear that.
So stoked.
Probably a not so nice phone call when you had to break that news. Okay, so you have your injury. What made you, or where did you decide, okay, I was going to go active duty Army, and how did the Guard fall into place?
Yeah. I looked at the National Guard and I thought about college and I thought about military, and the National Guard, from what I understood it to be at that time, was the perfect combination of both. I had the ability to join the military, to join the Army, build myself a foundation, give myself a direction and purpose in life, and then simultaneously pursue a degree in, something that I was interested in. And so making that choice for myself, it just made perfect sense that the National Guard would be the right fit to be able to do both at the same time. And so I set a date. I said, if I don't have something in place by, I think I said January 1st, or it might have even been December at that time. And if I didn't have something in place that I was going to go do, that I was going to call a recruiter and start the process of joining the National Guard.
And you were still currently in the DEP. Your ASVAB was valid with the active duty, right? You took the ASVAB at Denver MEPS, I'm assuming?
I did, yeah.
So you took the ASVAB, you had a good physical on file, correct? And you were working with the active duty. And so for our viewers and listeners, right, if you are in the DEP, not to step on recruiters on the active duty / reserve recruiters, but you are not... You can switch, and if you are in a position to where life happens and school or work or family happens and you need to kind of step away from that contract, how easy was it for you working with a National Guard recruiter to kind of come over to the Guard? Did everything stay the same? Did you have to go take an ASVAB again? Did you have to go do a physical after your injury? What happened there?
Yeah, there was a couple steps in the middle of that. So, I had broke my wrist in 2009. I was still on track to shipped out to training once I was cleared physically. Decided active duty wasn't the right fit, and I'd actually opted out of the DEP program in late 2009. And so I was no longer in the DEP when I went to process with the National Guard. Like you said, my ASVAB was still good. I had taken it. I had scored at 76, something like that, and I had that good, so I didn't have to take it again.
Yep.
And then my physical, while it was still good, I had the injury, so I had to go back through the physical, be reevaluated for my wrist at that time. I actually had to go back to the orthopedic surgeon in Denver who had gotten my wrist fixed through and get paperwork showing the pre-op and post-op. Brought that to the Denver MEPS and then was cleared to enlist right after that.
Okay. And we tell, I was just on a phone call with an applicant. If you're watching, you're going to understand what I'm saying. But I need everyone, our viewers and listeners, to understand that if you're working with a recruiter in any branch, active duty, reserves, National Guard, any of the compos, once you are, we call it Q&E in the recruiting world, you're qualified, not enlisted. You have a good physical and you have a good ASVAB. It's on you as the applicant getting ready to serve your country in whatever, capacity you're about to go do. Stay healthy, stay out of trouble, and stay motivated. Because, I'm so glad that it worked out for you, but we've heard horror stories of an injury or something happens, they're in the wrong place, wrong time, something morally happens, they are charged with something, and then that dream or that next plan that you were trying to do all goes away.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it very could have easily taken me out of commission.
Right.
You just never know how those injuries turn out.
I'm glad it didn't.
Me too. Me too. I'm glad to be here. Absolutely.
So you're working with a National Guard recruiter. What MOS did you choose when you were thinking active duty?
11 Bravo. So same MOS I chose when I went to the Guard. I wanted a purpose. I wanted a challenge, and my ASVAB score said I could do mostly anything I wanted to do at that point. And I chose what I thought would be the hardest job, give me a challenge, and just said go. Probably made that recruiter's life very easy when I first started talking to him.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have a lot of questions. I didn't have a lot of concerns, and
that was me too.
Started a process, man. It was very, very quick with the active duty.
That was me too, and my recruiter might remember that.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, how's your physical? I was like, I don't know. If you find something in Genesis from me, I'll be surprised. Guess what? When I went to do the OCS, like chapter 2, they were like, you don't have anything on Genesis. I'm like, I know. They only found like the root canal they just made on me.
Yeah.
That was the only thing. They're like, are you okay? I said, well, it's because in Puerto Rico, electric breakers were not a thing.
Right.
So I was like, I know, but I know there's nothing because I cut myself here and there, but minor stuff. There's no broken bones so far, no longboards. I never did any of that. So
yeah, stay off a longboard here. You won't have to worry about the potential injuries. And the Genesis, man, that thing is
new game.
It is a new game. But I look at it from the perspective of so when I went through in 2011, and that's when I enlisted into the National Guard.
Okay.
I had that injury, and this is pre-Genesis. So it was already out there that the injury was something I had sustained, and that's what I had to go through to get out of the DEP. So in order to go back through MEPS, to go and pull that paperwork from the doctor, which is something I had to do in order to reprocessing it at MEPS. Now, in post-Genesis, the doctors at MEPS won't request those types of documents unless it is something that might be missing in Genesis, something that would there's some kind of gray area that would determine if the condition is a disqualifier versus a non-disqualifier. And that's the only reason why they would pull it prior to going to MEPS. And then if they didn't need it before MEPS, the only reason why you need it after that is if you need a waiver. So the paperwork and processing timelines for our applicants post-Genesis is actually greatly shortened.
Right.
Because we don't have to do a lot of that work on the front end, and we don't have to have a stack of 1,000 pieces of paper, 1,500 pieces of paper prior to that applicant stepping foot in the MEPS.
Just be honest with the recruiter that you're working with.
100%.
Okay, so, and I get to say this for the first time on air since the podcast, we've had to, in the last year since we've started this podcast, we've had to say some installation names with their new names. So you went to Fort Benning, Sand Hill,
yes.
Home of the infantry.
Absolutely.
And now it is Fort Benning again. Welcome back, Fort Benning.
Fort Benning.
And so went through, and was it everything you wanted? You wanted the toughest challenge, become an infantryman. Did it meet or exceed your expectations?
Yeah. It was the challenge I thought it was going to be. What I really found for myself was that I thrived in the structure of the military. Coming from a sports background, a team sports background where you had practice Monday through Friday. It was at 3:30 at this time, this place, and the discipline of that team sport, that when I left those team sports, leaving high school and stepping into being an adult, I realized that the military was the structure that I was missing. And the foundation of that for me, and it's built for everything in my life now, is it started with my personal fitness. Every morning at basic training, you woke up at 4 o'clock, and the backwards planning, right? You knew you go to bed at 9, 10 o'clock. Okay, well, I got to wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning because it takes me 30 minutes to get ready. I have to be downstairs in PTs by 05.
15 minutes early.
15 minutes early.
Add in Firewatch, yep.
And you just, Firewatch. Oh, that's a horror story right there, right? So you just knew. You had a backwards plan for it. And if you weren't planning ahead, you were going to have a very rough morning ahead of you.
Right.
And so when I left that environment and came back to home, because you go through, and at that time, 11 Bravo OSET, the one station unit training, was 15 weeks. I think you probably went through the same thing when you went through.
Yep.
It's now 22 weeks. But coming back home and being back in the civilian world, I built my life around a similar structure. Right? There's a lot more freedom, right? A lot more distractions. But every week, every day, I knew, okay, waking up 5 days a week, I got to wake up at 04. It takes me 10 minutes to drive to the gym, so that means it takes me 30 minutes to get ready, to get there by 5, and then I'd do my PT. And I'd have an hour and a half, come back home, get ready for work.
You have to.
It was so instrumental for me in my success as a young adult that it truly changed the course of where I was going in my life by building that foundation as a soldier around my personal fitness.
Yep. Life skills, right? If you are needing life skills, if you are needing time management, if you are needing physical fitness, if you need dreams or aspirations or goals, being able to come back and after your training, develop that plan, and you still are a citizen soldier, and it's up to you. No one's going to be kicking on your front door at the barracks and waking you up. You have to be the adult and do what's needed.
100%.
So you come back, and we actually started our careers together with Alpha Company, 1st and 157th Infantry. Shout out Alpha Company.
Old school Alpha Company.
Yes. Yeah. And so tell us about your career throughout the infantry and Alpha Company and where that's led you to kind of now today.
Yeah. It's funny. I joined the infantry, joined the National Guard in 2011, graduated from OSET in June, and I remember I showed up to my first drill, and my platoon sergeant looked at me. It was Sergeant First Class Pop. Was my platoon sergeant at that time, and before I joined the platoon or got soaked into the platoon, he walked up to all the new gains, and we were standing in the company office, and he looked at all of us. I think there might have been 3 or 4 of us standing there, and he says to us, which of you can pass a PT test? And without hesitation, my arm shoots up, right? I got this. And he says, okay, you're coming with me. And so I at that point, I can't even remember if that was, I think that might have been 3rd platoon. It was the 2nd or 3rd platoon at Alpha Company. We're in the north end of Colorado Springs at that. Fort Carson.
811.
Yeah, building 811. That was the first station that I was at, and I remember the very next drill that I showed up to. I didn't send my team leader at that time. It was Staff Sergeant Lopez. Might have even been Buck Sergeant Lopez at that time.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't
E5 for you, non-military.
Yeah, E5. He was he came up to me and he said, "Hey, I told you needed to send me your name, phone number, and email to me last week, and you didn't." So I remember I showed up, and the very first interaction I had with my team leader at that time was I was doing some push-ups and doing some corrective training here for my deficiencies.
Sure.
And I was the only guy, and there's five or six of us getting corrected at that time, and I was the only guy who didn't fall out from the corrective training. And for me, that it set a tone that no matter what, if I was going to make a mistake, I was going to be accountable for it. I was going to pay for it. And the foundation for me as a soldier is that, number one, I wouldn't quit. You wouldn't see me grimace when I was down in the push-up position. You wouldn't see me grimace when you'd have me doing sprints or running across the field as an infantry guy. I'd be the dude. I'd be the fastest one out there. I would always be the one in the front leaning rest position doing all the push-ups that I could because it was just good training as a private that's what I was going to do.
Yep.
I got very used to being very strong because as a private, I thought I knew a lot, and I didn't know a lot.
Sure.
It definitely opened my eyes. It was a great precedent setter for me. I was very fortunate as a young private that there was leaders who took an interest in me and believed in my potential as a human, a man, and as a soldier. That when others saw other leaders saw a soldier making mistakes, and not a hothead, but just prone to doing the wrong thing sometimes and not really realizing why up front. And it wasn't because I didn't care, but that leader, who's still in the Guard today, is part of the reason why I was able to push past some of those early challenges as a soldier and really step into a role as a leader in the organization at a young age.
And I love how you mentioned that that leader for you, that mentor, is still in the Guard today. And I can't stress enough for those, that are needing to know the difference between active duty and the reserves and the National Guard. Those leaders and mentors that you're going to get in this organization, regardless of the MOS you go into. Not saying that active duty leadership is bad by any means. I have great friends that are in the reserves and active duty, and they're phenomenal, and I've only heard great things. But we are not PCS'd, or we are not forced to move and have different duty locations. And so that mentor, that maybe E5 when we were privates, that are now E7s, E8s, E9s, right? Yeah. They have a vested interest in you, because if you decide to stay in this organization, it's up to them if you're going to turn out to be guided correctly. 100%. And they need to uphold the highest of standard, because as they move up, we will now be replacing and then mentoring the new junior soldiers coming in that are going to hopefully stay with this family, right? This Guard family that we have here. And it's a very small organization. So I love that. Yeah. So you were super strong because we learned from our mistakes, but also very smart in your ASVAB. Good job. What are some of the highs and lows throughout the infantry career? Some of the best things that you can think of, and some of the worst times that you can think of? I'm sure there's quite a bit of both.
Yeah, I like how you said that. For me as a young soldier, and again, I got lucky. I had some great leaders who believed in me really early on. My first annual training with the infantry was in 2012. We went down to Camp Red Devil. At that time, Afghanistan was still at the peak of the war. Yep. Iraq was going on, where at that time we were prepping to go to Afghanistan, and so going down to Camp Red Devil, running missions. I worked really hard to be really good at my job, to be proficient as a frontline rifleman. And another leader in the platoon at that time took an interest in me, and he actually recommended me for Best Warrior competition. I
remember this.
Yep. I believe I was E3, so I might have been a private first class at that time. And went straight from Camp Red Devil, tired, hungry, right?
Annual training in the field, no sleep, no showers. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it probably smelled horrible at that time. Shout out Camp Red Devil. Went from that straight into Best Warrior competition. And in the battalion, I won as the best soldier that year from the battalion. And that, again, set a precedent. It really catapulted me into the next part of my career. The demonstrated potential for me as a soldier and as an individual, not only proving to myself what I could do as a soldier, but as an individual, setting my mind to something. It showed me that all the hard work that I was doing as a soldier was paying off. The things I didn't know that I was leading up to, and the culmination for that was to win the Best Warrior for the battalion. The follow-on to that, I went to the state. I got second place at state, so I didn't do any additional level of competition at that time.
Sure.
But the infantry saw me differently. My teammates saw me differently after that competition. And again, as for me, feeling that confidence as an individual, it really demonstrated what I was capable of as somebody who had seen mistakes and hadn't seen that success yet. It just it raised my spirits up a lot and really inspired me to show me what I could do in the military. That to me was one of the main highlights of me as a young private. I was able to go to some schools early on, so air assault school for me. I went to air assault school twice. So I had a fatal hookup on the last rappel day, my first time at air assault school, and man, that hurt.
Yeah,
that hurt. There were some things that kind of led up to that. I wasn't at the in briefing for that day. I actually had a retest on sling loads, and so passed my second time in sling loads. Went to the rappel tower and didn't get the in briefing for rappel tower. So there was some blocks of instruction that I missed and didn't realize it. So if anybody doesn't know, when you go to air assault school, there's different phases that you go through. Sling loads is the hardest. So if you make it through sling loads, you're pretty well set to graduate, as long as you don't screw up on the 12-mile ruck march at the end. Or the layout, because that's where
make
guys,
sure you have everything.
Make sure you have those socks, canteens, and there's guys that get sent home on the very last day of air assault school. So I went through and I had a fatal hookup, and a fatal hookup is pretty straightforward. You step up to the tower, you tie your own Swiss seat, which is a rappelling climbing seat made from rope. You demonstrate to the cadre, right, that you know which hand is your brake hand. They inspect your Swiss seat, make sure it's tied properly. You wait in line, you go up to the top of the tower. You tie in with your rope, ready to rappel, and then you're inspected by the cadre one last time. And a fatal hookup is pretty straightforward, where if a knot is tied incorrectly at that point, they can pull on it, pull it apart, and the force of just pulling the knot becomes undone. And it's just, right hand over left hand at the wrong time, and all of a sudden you have a fatal hookup. And that, for me, I stepped up, man. I was super confident. I was so excited. The last rappel of the day, and the cadre takes a look at my Swiss seat, good to go. Take a look at my knots here to tie in, and they call over the head instructor at the top of the tower. And I wasn't thinking to myself at that time that I tied the knot so well that they had to have a second guy come over, but I wasn't convinced that I'd screwed up that badly. And lo and behold, the guy says, "Hey, go ahead and unhook, come down to the bottom of the tower, your fatal hookup at this time," and came back home the same day. And it was a hard gut check, right? You think you know everything, you think you're good to go, and if you don't double check your stuff one last time, that's when the bad things start to happen. So that was, for me, that was a hard point. I ended up going back. I got my air assault wings the second time around. No problems, no fatal hookups, right? Thank goodness for that. It was that was a tough time, man. But I really enjoyed my time with the Guard. The schools themselves have been challenging in their own rights. The ability to serve in the state and leading from the air assault school. I actually came back home, and my then fiance was calling me. Right, we were talking every day, and Denver was flooding. I mean, there was just Cherry Creek going from down Spear. My then fiance, now wife, worked in downtown Denver, and she would take the bus. And she took a picture of the bike path in the middle of downtown Denver, and the creek had risen in a very short amount of time, almost up to the street level. And if anybody's not from the Denver area, the Cherry Creek trail is, I'd say, a good probably 20 feet or more below the road, and the water had risen up to almost spilling out into the street. And this was in such a short amount of time that you had damage, you had things that were going on inside the city, and then outside of the city of Denver, Boulder, Lyons, and some of the front
I was on the Lyons
towns.
flood.
Yep. So we were out there together. I got back home from air assault school, still kind of licking my wounds a little bit. Got back home, and I was home for less than 8 hours, and our readiness NCO called me and said, "Hey, you're back home. We need you for the floods." And so 24 hours later, I was reporting down to Fort Carson and reporting in to be shuttled up to Lyons as part of the flood response.
Doing our job as guardsmen.
100%.
Colorado National Guard. So, and for all this time, Sergeant Klaus, you were a traditional, is what we call traditional National Guardsman, correct? You had a civilian career. I know that you were a personal trainer. Do you want to speak on kind of that dual life that you were living and that our soldiers, most of our soldiers in the organization live?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think it's about 85% of the total force in the Guard is the traditional part-time M-Day soldier where so for me, I got out of basic training, didn't have any job lined up. I was working in food service, straight out of basic training. Jumped over to bartending, and that's actually how I met my wife at a movie theater bar restaurant out in East Aurora. So we met there, and then started to kind of figure out what I was excited by as far as a profession. I'd wanted to go to school, and I was kind of holding off. I was, hey, I'm going to go to Ranger School. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that, and hadn't quite pulled the trigger on going to school at that time. And so started to pursue some different pathways for my job. And so I went to GNC, the local, general nutrition center, right? And started applying to the retail stores, and just shop there anyways. And so went in and applied one day, got the job. Worked my way up from a sales associate to assistant store manager, and then I was a store manager for 2 years, one of those years down in the Highlands Ranch area. Found some great success out there in sales and in what would be nutrition and fitness. And so moved up to the Denver area and then got a job with 24-Hour Fitness as a sales manager selling memberships. And so, really found my passion for fitness. Again, great leader in the company, believed in me and sponsored me to get my personal trainer certification. And that was my catalyst for really kind of the next phase of my civilian career. I went out, got my personal training certification. I became a assistant fitness manager, and then I was a fitness manager for 24-Hour Fitness just before COVID hit. And then at that time, decided I was going to go back to school. So I moved to Lifetime Fitness down in Parker as a personal trainer out there for about 6 to 8 months. Funny enough that this is March because I had left in 2020. I'd left to go to Master Fitness Trainer with the Army in Yakima, Washington. And, the Guard career is always marked by times and periods where you have your normal drill schedule, you have your AT, and you're taking your hiatus as that civilian soldier. And going to drill and then coming back, you pick up your business where you left off. And, it's kind of funny because the life kind of continues on without you, right? You're gone for the weekend. Everybody says, hey, welcome back. Here's all the things you missed. And, you're right back into the swing of things. So I went to Yakima, Washington, and at the end of my first week in Master Fitness Trainer, I was very excited by this course. I've been doing remedial PT with the Guard, getting guys back from almost being kicked out, right, for body fat percentage, height, weight, PT standards.
Sure.
And so to go to Master Fitness for me was this great culmination exercise, and I was ready for it. And the end of my first week, COVID made landfall in Seattle, so just over the mountain range from where I was in Yakima. So made landfall, and then by the time I came back home, it was all over. Right. And so I came back home on a Friday. I trained my personal training sessions I'd had scheduled for the Sunday. Went in on Monday morning to the gym, trained my sessions for the morning, and then by 5 o'clock I'd lost my job because all the gyms were shut down. So 10 years of being, in the National Guard at this point, and found my passion with fitness.
Yep.
And it was a gut check, right? It was this big blow, right? Because nobody knew what was going on. And our supervisor at that time for the trainers, he schedules a call out of his own time and will. He schedules a time to give all the trainers a call and says, "Hey, we don't know what's going on. We're expecting maybe to be shut down for a couple weeks, maybe a month." Right, you guys are furloughed, still get benefits. We're going to open back up soon.
Right.
It didn't open back up soon, right? We had our hopes. Didn't open up any time after that. That was probably June, I think, when the gyms opened back up. But I had a choice at that time as a main provider for my family. I had one kiddo at that time, and I looked at my wife and I said, "Hey, I could either take an unemployment check. I can go work part-time someplace, pick up an entry-level job somewhere.
Yeah.
or I can go full time with the National Guard. And, lo and behold, I'd actually picked up some shifts at the local Whole Foods. Fortunately, my brother was an employee there and helped segue me into a part-time job there. And I looked at my first-line leader with the Guard, and I said, hey, first set of orders that comes down, I want on it. So I knew they were coming down at some point.
Yeah.
And so orders come down for COVID, and April 1st, I started on full-time orders with the National Guard supporting the COVID mission in downtown Denver.
Yep.
And so this, full circle of 10 years being part-time had allowed me at that point to make this really great shift into a full-time job and being able to provide for my family, again, from this job that, it takes time from your schedule, it takes time from your family. And I was able to, flip that around. And then that was my catalyst to be able to provide for my family going forward.
Yep.
And it was an incredible thing, and again, extremely fortunate that I had that option in front of me to be able to take advantage of.
So much to unpack there, from you talking about what your hobbies and interests are and kind of extracurricular military opportunities that you have gone down, right? You did your Army schools, and then you went to Master Fitness, and you're taking on additional responsibilities within the unit because that was your passion, right? And we tell everyone we meet, right?
Mm-hmm.
The Guard, we are so small compared to active duty that the number of opportunities and the doors that will open for you, whether it's fitness or music or climbing or marksmanship or biathlon or endurance, the tree of possibilities and the branches that you can go down are endless. And so you found yours, and the world shut down and things are falling apart, but we have this support system, this brother and sisterhood here in the Guard.
Huge.
And the points of contact and the doors that open there. Okay, so now we're full-time and you are on orders, active duty with the state of Colorado.
Yep.
How did you then transition into where you kind of are today, recruiting?
Yeah, this is a huge piece I talk about when I talk about my Guard career. It's really not about what you know; it's about who you know. And again, fortunate that I've worked with leaders that have believed in me, and I've kept in contact with over the years, guys that were still in the Guard when I was a private. And at that time, it was the retention NCO for the infantry, who I was talking to him about whether or not I wanted to stay in the Guard, right? I was on full-time orders. They were coming to an end. And the conversation I ended up having with him was, hey, I'm thinking about either getting out or going full-time with the Guard. And, at that time, there was COVID money coming down. I was able to go on retention orders with him at the infantry. Funny enough, he's actually in the infantry, the recruiting battalion now, Sergeant First Class Cox.
Mm-hmm. Great leader. Great
leader, great dude. And he was my weapons squad leader when I was a private. So, Sergeant Joe Cox and, Private Klaus back in that time, and coming full circle and coming to work with him and learning the retention side of the house for a couple months, and then segueing my way into the recruiting world. I started on recruiting orders in October of 2020. And so that then became the catalyst here for where I'm at for my current role and, what is going to be my long-term career in the Guard.
Right. So easy transition, right? You were already pretty much on state activation emergency orders, full-time orders for the Guard, doing COVID, had that conversation, had that mentorship. For our people that come in and talk to us and say, hey, I want to be full-time Guard, right? That's the beauty of this organization. If you want to go get that secondary education up to a master's degree, let us pay for it, full ride here in state. Go start your own business, use your VA home loan, VA business loan. Go be a firefighter, cop, first responder, teacher, lawyer, doctor, like that 80% of our force is.
Use your security clearance TS if you have a top secret.
Sure.
We have
yeah.
We have privates and E4s making here like 6 figures plus.
Get your pilot's license, get your CDL. We'll give you your CDL, but just to have something in your back pocket, right? That backup on backup to support the family, right? And be that provider. Okay, so you made the decision, you know what? I'm going to go full time. Became a recruiter. You were a traditional, right, recruiter for the state of Colorado. You had an area that you worked and schools that you went into.
Yeah.
You worked your way up, as I can see here on your badge, from your basic, right, recruiting badge to senior and now master or expert badge recruiter.
Yep.
And now here we are. I'm looking at the clock here at 49 minutes. Took over for the Colorado National Guard as the point of contact for 519th Special Forces Group Alpha. Tell us about that.
Oh, man. Yeah, what a wild ride. So I spent a couple years on the street recruiting mission, like you mentioned, and started at a very strange time with COVID. Again, difficult time for recruiting, and the news reports all showed how difficult that time period was. I saw some great success, and again, very fortunate. Growing up in Denver, networking my way through the city, knowing good points of contact. We call them centers of influence, and really VIPs in the recruiting world, and I just ended up growing up with them, right, and knowing who to reach out to when I wanted to conduct events, or even just getting referrals from folks, and really spent my time grinding through that system. Saw some great success, and took over the Special Forces recruiting section in December of last year, and really working my way into that position, and so fortunate, man. I can't tell you the ability to work with the motivated and extremely dedicated individuals over in the Special Forces Battalion.
Sure.
I get to work alongside of Green Berets in their assessing and selection of future Green Berets, and communication through asking for help with events, getting equipment to bring out to the general public. It's been a wild ride, and now working with these guys on a daily basis, I can't tell you how inspiring it is to work with these guys, and the level of expertise and experience and guard experience that these guys bring to the table. It's really wild.
Amen. Shout out 519 Special Forces Group. You all know who you are. Tip of the spear. So it's funny how we were talking about earlier as recruiters, and for us, when we came to the Guard, we knew what we wanted to do, right? I'm gonna be an 11 Bravo. That was my goal. That was my dream. That was yours. You knew you were gonna be an officer one day, Officer Candidate Rivera. We all knew. And for you, right, in the Special Forces recruiting world, not every state has Special Forces. Correct. Is that correct?
Yes. Correct.
Which states are the only states that offer Green Berets in the National Guard?
I honestly couldn't list them all off the top of my head. Some of the major points for us is, California, Washington, Colorado, Ohio, Massachusetts, Rhode Island. Then you have Florida, Missouri, Alabama, and I'm going to, not to snuff anybody here, can't say them all off the top of my
I
head.
put you on the spot. You're Colorado specific.
Yeah, Colorado specific, but we do also have Utah. So,
Yep.
Our headquarters for 519th is in Utah. So we do work pretty closely, and myself work pretty closely with the headquarters and recruiting element out of the Utah. That is where, a lot of decisions are made and processes are established from.
And so for us, right, we knew what we wanted to do. And as recruiters, if you come in and you're unsure, that's okay. It's probably about 50-50. When maybe you're doing it for school and to help pay for college. Maybe you're doing it because you want to pick up that TS clearance. Maybe you just want a separate job. Maybe you just need a break in life. Maybe you need some adventure. You work a 9 to 5 behind a desk in a corporate building, and you once a weekend want to be out in the field, right, with the men and women serving, and get that sense of adventure that you're missing, right, because you're stuck. Come join the Guard. We will help you find that job. Now, for those that are watching and listening that know about the Green Beret, a lot of you do your own research. There's a lot of information online.
Yes.
And there's a lot of information that talk about the training pipelines and what the job entails. And a lot of you know kind of what you're going to get into. And so I'm sure that you are flooded on a daily basis with individuals that think they have what it takes to come join this team. What does the step look like? What's kind of different? As a normal kind of traditional recruiter, we're inside of schools and we're doing community events. We're doing a lot of cold calling. We're walking the streets. You don't have to do much of that because there are so many of you out there that if you want to step up to the plate, you think you have it. Sergeant Klaus is going to give us information. What's the difference? If somebody wants to be a Green Beret versus, us coming in as infantrymen, are there different standards, qualifications? How does that look?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's funny because as far as the special operations community goes, there's so many different units that people know about. There's movies about different branches. There's books that are written here about different stories and events that have happened.
Yeah.
And the Green Beret profession, and they live it, and you can see it all over them when you interact with them. The concept of being a silent professional is so inherent in who they are as Green Berets, as service members, and even as human beings. I mean, just again, level of experience. So the pathway to becoming that member of the community, right, and earning the Green Beret. When somebody reaches out to me, right, we have a number of different pathways that, I've Instagram, I put out stuff on Reddit, done stuff on YouTube. We have our National Guard websites that, people can reach out through. They know what they want.
Right.
Those guys that reach out through those channels, they've typically done most of the research. They know the process. They know how selection works. They know how Q course works. And they've done the research on what the standards are to get there. And so the culture in the applicant pool is a night and day difference than working with the street cats here who didn't know about the Guard. They didn't know about the Army and all the benefits that it had to offer. The guys that are knocking on my door want the Green Beret. They know what it takes. They've done the research. And really the benefits of service become secondary to what is just being a part of that community.
Right. And I know you said there's, the different SOF or Special Operation Forces in the different branches. Can you explain what the difference is? And we don't need to talk about, some of the other communities, but as a Green Beret being on a team here for 519th in Colorado, what does the job entail? What's the mission set? What is their main purpose?
So the motto of the Green Beret, de oppresso liber, right, is to free the oppressed, to liberate the oppressed, And so the job and the role and responsibility of the Green Beret is the ability to go and train local indigenous forces and populations here to be able to fight, right? And so the Green Beret is going to walk in unafraid into a unknown foreign land, the ability then to communicate with the local population in a language that is not theirs.
Sure.
And then train them to do a job to be able to protect, rise up, and defend themselves. That is the inherent mission in the Green Berets and what they're able to do. The skill set required to do that, and this is where the different skill sets of the soft community come into play. Is we talk about like the inside the Army, right? So we have the Ranger Battalion, we have the Special Forces, and so you look at the Ranger Battalion, Ranger Regiment, as the one of the premier direct action forces, right, of the military. And then you take the Green Beret, who has the skill set of being a direct action guy. They have the ability to be then a force multiplier and train people in that skill set among many other skill sets to then be a self-sustaining force. So they have the ability to go out and conduct direct action, raids, high-value targets, but they also have the ability to go out and train these folks, right? These, again, local indigenous populations to conduct those types of operations, reconnaissance, surveillance, among a number of other things through many different means. But the main focus there is the ability to train and develop those local forces. That's what that is their inherent mission.
Sea, air, land, right?
Sea, air, land, and now cyber. That is the new domain they're talking about. Yeah, I mean, technology is just exploding.
Can we pull up Rivera? You've got a video going here. So this is 5/19th, correct?
Yep.
Can we pull up a link to their Instagram page so that if our viewers and listeners are interested, they can go to Instagram and follow these individuals as well as Sergeant Klaus's information? Because we're going to start really diving deep on, for those that are listening right now and you're like, this is me. This is exactly what I'm doing. I've done my research. I'm ready. I need to reach out. So this page here, this is 5/19th's actual page, right? Instagram?
Yeah. Their social media is 519 SFG on all the platforms.
5/19th SFG on all platforms.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
You have YouTube, you have Instagram, and then I think your collab on some of these, right, Sergeant?
Oh, yeah, I'm sure we can see. All right. And so, Sergeant Klaus, this is your page here, right? And so if we go up, your link or your handle is, let's take a look here.
SFC Klaus _COARNG. So Sergeant First Class, Colorado Army National Guard.
And individuals can direct message you through Instagram here. Do you have your work number right there?
Yes.
Make sure we tag that at the bottom.
100%.
And so we'll add that. Go follow, right? I watch their videos. I watch your videos. You were actually at the SFRE, which is happening this weekend starting today, correct?
Started last night. So
excuse me, last night.
Yeah, but the main events kick off on Friday, and then their big day is going to be tomorrow. So that's where a lot of their challenges are going to be presented to the candidates.
And so for those that do know and have done their research, you know what that entails. For those that don't know, right, what is that SFRE? What does that stand for? What are they doing this weekend that you were at there last night and this morning?
Yeah, absolutely. And SFRE is a common acronym that's seen around anything. If you ever Google anything related to special forces, so it's a concept that's thrown out to the ether a lot. But the Special Forces Readiness Evaluation, or SFRE, is the Special Forces pre-selection process. So what if you ever talk to a GB, a Green Beret, about what an SFRE is? It is their interview. It is their job interview for prospective Green Berets prior to them being able to attend SFAS, or Special Forces Assessment and Selection. So if you are a current serving member of the National Guard,
okay,
or and from my recruiting pipeline is anybody who has served in the military previously, comes back into the military service. They go into the Colorado National Guard. They go to the Special Warfare Training Detachment, we call it the SWID, and they attend an SFRE to assess their ability to attend and pass selection, and then character, personality. They're looking to see if guys that attend that SFRE are somebody that they want on their team in the future. Because these Green Berets that are coming in as cadre are assessing these guys' ability, but they're truly deciding, and I like what you said earlier here, is they're choosing their legacy at that point, is they want to bring the right people into the regiment who are coming in to be Green Berets for the right reason, because that is the lasting generational impact for these Green Berets.
And the organization.
The regiment as a whole. And it's a very special process, and the cadre at the SWID take a specific passion to assessing and training to them what is going to be the next generation of Green Berets. I've
been lucky enough to attend one almost the entire weekend. Thank you for letting me come down 5/19th. And it's no joke. Coming from the infantry, we're out there in the field doing ruck marches, using our single tubes and having fun. And if you are a glutton for punishment, I know you said you were the first one to get down and do push-ups. If that's you,
we're watching. We're playing some of it. This is on their 519 SFG YouTube page.
12 degrees outside. There they are. It's dark, probably 4 in the morning, 5 in the morning. They're going to start their run. That's what it looks like to me, Sergeant Klaus.
Yeah, it typically, so the first day of the SFRE is going to be the PT test. You can see them doing pull-ups here.
What's a standard with that? Because it's not the typical ACFT it's not the Army Combat Fitness Test, which everybody else, every MOS has to take once a year. And there's a maximum 600. Is that the same physical assessment that they're doing here?
No, this is going to be the modified combat fitness test. So you can see they're doing the typical hand release push-ups, which are the same standards as the ACFT, so the Army Combat Fitness Test.
Okay.
You can see them doing the max plank there, and this is them conducting the standard 2-mile run. So there are portions that are similar to the ACFT. You could see the exception there is pull-ups.
Okay.
Last year they were doing a rope climb as part of the assessment as well. They have since removed that from the test itself, and pull-ups being the main standard for what would be like fitness capacity for body pulling exercises.
Okay.
To determine somebody's ability to pull their own body weight up, right? So the modified combat fitness test, they also conduct a 12-mile ruck march. Under time, just off the top of my head, I think it's 55 pounds dry in their ruck.
55 pounds. And is it a 15-minute mile pace? Is that the standard?
That's the maximum standard, yeah.
Maximum.
Excuse me, that's the minimum standard. I apologize, because in the SFRE land, the minimum is scraping by. And even if you can hit the minimum, it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be selected. And the chances are, if you're hitting the minimum, you're probably not ready to move on. The Colorado 519th SFRE, they're looking for guys that are ready to exceed the standards and really bring 110% of their maximum potential to the table each and every event that they are assessed on.
Okay. And so for those that know about the ACFT, and maybe you're a civilian and this is a dream of yours, whether it's SF or just coming in, because you're going to have to take the ACFT if you're just doing any other MOS or job with us here in the National Guard, you can find that information, right? You can Google ACFT or the Army Combat Fitness Test. And you're saying for prior service, for non-prior service, for people that are in and attending, that ACFT, what are you looking at? Are you want to be in the high fives, close to maxing out at 600?
If you're so again, the modified combat fitness test, which is a derivative of the ACFT, it does take some of the similar standards, right? If you're looking at it from the perspective of like the ACFT standards, 80% on that scale is kind of a baseline level. Yeah, it's a baseline.
Okay.
What I talk to guys about, because I get calls all the time about attending SFREs, and to go back a little bit to your question about what is required to get a contract for a training pipeline like Special Forces.
Yep.
There is no requirement in the 18 X-ray contract, which is the non-prior service guaranteed shot at selection.
Okay.
Right? And that is the most common phrase that you'll see along with the SFRE. 18X. It's the most common phrase with the SFRE. There is no requirement to attend an SFRE to get an 18 X-ray contract. So what that means is the SFRE, being for in-service guys, is not a requirement for
an 18X
contract to be able to go and attend selection.
The SFRE is for just those that are in uniform right now, and they're looking. They could be any MOS, right? Any MOS in the Guard.
100%. Yep. And the feeder, there is no feeder MOS. There are skill sets. So when you go 18 X-ray, you will go through 11 Bravo OSET, right? Which is when you get to selection and you get to, specifically in Q courses, small unit tactics or SUT. Those are the kind of foundational skills you're going to see involved in SUT. So 11 Bravos have a skill set to bring to the table when it comes to Q, but you're going to see guys from all across the Army National Guard and Army different MOSs that are successful in selection regardless of their background.
Sure.
So that is something to consider, that it doesn't matter really who you are, as long as you possess the characteristics and the drive, that you can be selected and be successful in this training pipeline.
Okay. I want to talk about, so if you are not really in the know, right, the Colorado National Guard, we are so full of prior service individuals. Shout out to every single service member here on the National Guard. Throughout every MOS, we have Marines. I'm not going to say prior service because once Marine, always Marine. I get that yelled at all the time. But we have Marines in our organization. Air Force. I don't know if we have a Space Force transfer yet. I wouldn't be surprised if we did. Navy. We have it all. And so these prior service individuals, you know who you are, and you know who you are watching that say, hey, I miss it. I did a 4-year contract. I loved my time. I didn't love my time, but I want to continue serving. But I'm here in Colorado. I've established myself. I have a career. Maybe I want to come work full-time for the Guard, whatever the case is. I want to start with you there. So if a prior service individual, if you are looking at coming into the 519th specifically and earning your Green Beret, is there a background for these prior service individuals? What if they already kind of served in a soft unit before? What if they were a MARSOC Marine or a Scout Sniper, or what if they were a PJ in the Air Force? Let's start there. What if they have the background in the soft community, and what if they were just an 11 Bravo at a 4th ID down at Fort Carson? How do those individuals, do they go to any recruiter? Do you recommend them calling you? What's the process for a prior service individual to becoming a Green Beret?
So as the Special Forces recruiter for Colorado, that is my only lane, right? I deal with guys that want to go to the Special Forces training pipeline. I also deal with the support element, so anything that has to do with 519th. They call them soft enablers. So support MOSs could be like truck drivers. It could be a mechanic. It could be a fueler. It could be going into like the military intelligence side, or even like signal, going through like the 25 series guys who deal with like communications and even like networking. That's all my lane. So if you are a prior service individual and you want to come and join the Army National Guard and go into anything related to Special Forces, that is the only thing I deal with.
Okay.
And so there is typically special considerations, especially when it comes to prior service guys, right? We have guys that are coming back into service who are going to require medical waivers. They are going to require administrative waivers depending on the type of separation they receive from their respective branches of service. And so when those guys start to come back in and then they want to attend selection, there's additional paperwork, pathways, processes that I have to take as their recruiter in order to get them able and allowed to attend selection if that's what they want to do.
Okay.
And so the relationships that I have over at 519th and the connections that I've been able to develop in that role allows me to give the best opportunities to the guys that come to me when they say they want to go to 519th, either as an enabler or if they want to go to the Special Forces training pipeline.
And so they reach out to you and they say, hey, now I want to dispel some rumors here. If you were direct action, whatever the case is, MOS in any branch of service, and I'm sure there's a lot of rumors floating out. Hey, I was a PJ, I was a recon scout sniper, raider, whatever the case is. I was a Ranger Bat individual.
Yeah.
Do I get to skip some training?
That's a great question.
Do I have to sign a full contract? Can I come try out and you guys can evaluate me? What opportunities for those individuals?
Yeah, so for prior special operations from any branch of service, number one, so basic training requirement for the Army. If you've been in the Army already and you've been out for less than 5 years, you do not require basic training. Right? If you've been out for more than 5 years, on paper you require basic training. There's exceptions to policy with that.
Sure.
From the other branches of service, if those guys have been a part of special operations from the Navy, if they were just on the fleet, let's say, and just part of a ship crew someplace,
okay.
And I apologize, I don't know some of the Navy rules.
Lingo, yeah.
Yeah, but if they were part of anything other than special operations, they would require basic training to join the Army. Right, regardless if it's Special Forces training pipeline or not. But if they were part of, like, let's say the SWID boats or the Navy SEALs, they don't require basic training. Same for like the PJs. Mm-hmm. So special operations from those branches of service will not require basic training. To skip parts of like selection or a Q course, there is no way to skip past those parts there. Right, past experiences can build and give you a better resume. When it comes to like looking at you on paper, it'll give you a better skill set when you're working amongst a team during the selection.
You're going to have a lot of knowledge. Okay.
A ton of knowledge. And being able to be the guy that somebody's going to look to for answers is a attribute that can, allow you to have a higher chance of being selected. right? If you're the guy that somebody's coming to in a high pressure situation and you have the answers, that's an attribute here that can contribute to being a successful Green Beret. And so that's something that can be a good attribute that they would look at during like an SFRE or the actual selection at Fort Bragg, right? So the experiences that I think prior service bring to the table can give them an edge, a leg up when it comes to going to selection, because they have military experience that is unique to their pathway, right? Versus like an 18 X-ray who hasn't been in the military may not have some of those experiences. And so those guys might look to some of the prior service dudes or guys that have been serving for a while for answers in some of those high pressure situations.
And so a prior service individual who's been out for less than 5 years, or even more than 5 years, and a waiver gets approved, you can come back in. You may be able to not go back to basic training, right? Or you may have to, depending on what the case is for you.
Case by case, absolutely.
They sit down with you, and they want that 18X contract. I have heard, right, and I'm sure those of you prior service have heard of possibly, hey, I don't want to sign a full contract. Mm-hmm. I've done 4 years, I've done 6 years in the military in some capacity. I'm not going to sign a 3-year, a 4-year, or a 6-year. Is there an option in the 519th community?
Almost sounds like you're leading me to a question here. So great point. So if an individual comes to me and they do not require any kind of basic training, or they don't require a job training on the front end of their enlistment, then they're eligible for what's called a Tri-1 enlistment. So that's a 1-year contract that they can join the National Guard, they can attend a selection, SFRE, right? Get selected, and then should have enough time to hit a selection as part of that 1-year contract. And that kind of gives them the flexibility to say if something doesn't fall the way they want it to as part of that 1 year, now they're not tied to anything.
They're kind of protected.
Yeah, I have an option now. If it doesn't go the way I want it to, do I want to stay in the Guard? Do I want to maybe just choose a different pathway? Do I want to go to, again, a soft enabler position, or maybe I want to go to the infantry and go crush it with the mountain infantry for a while, right? It gives that individual the flexibility to make that determination without being tied to a long-term contract with the military.
What should we tell these individuals? What advice, what are the requirements for that Tri-1 contract?
It's not available for everybody. So if you require basic training, the other thing is, too, if somebody's coming to me as a prior service, if they do not have a translatable job skill in the Army, my first role after I get them enlisted is to get them qualified in a job, which could be typically 11 Bravo is a very common one.
Okay.
Because then if they fail any part of the selection process, now they have something to fall back on.
Right.
I'm not going to send a guy here to the SWID who may not be experienced in the Army, who may not be experienced in a job in the Army, and then have something happen where they just don't succeed. I want to have something for them to fall back on, right? If you require any kind of training on the front end of an enlistment prior to an SFRE, you cannot do a Tri-1 contract. The minimum time for those cats is just 3 years, and most of that's eaten up here by some of that initial active duty training before they attend their SFRE. But I think about that as conditioning. So when you're getting paid to train at basic training, at a job training, versus maybe you're more distracted at home, you just don't have time to do it at home. Now you're part of that initial active duty training hemisphere where that's your only role in life. There's that structure that's inherent where maybe you just need that extra little push. That's your time here to fine tune some of that conditioning.
Okay. Now, what about prior service already qualified Green Berets?
Oh yeah, I love bringing those guys in, man. Absolutely. So we've brought in a few. We have options for going to a team. If you're a qualified 18 series guy, maybe you've gotten out for a couple of years, you've done the civilian thing for a little while, and it's just not the right fit. You're ready to get back on a team. It's a very simple process to get you back in as an already qualified GB. We have to take you back to MEPS to do a MEPS physical examination. It's just your medical examination. And then we can get you a contract to go straight to a team from there.
Okay. Now, switching over to probably most of the audience, non-prior service. You've never served before. You are of eligible age. You are 16 years, 11 months old. For us here in the Colorado National Guard, that's when we can start sitting down with you and your parents or you and your support team and start looking to see what your future is going to look like in the National Guard. But you are a 16-year-old, 11-month or more, and you are qualified for military service, right? You meet the qualifications. You may have looked at some of those online, or you've talked to a local recruiter and you say, yep, okay, I'm going to be a Green Beret. What does it look like for these individuals?
Absolutely. So the non-prior service category of enlistment is going to be, like you said, guys who've never served before. If they're, in order to qualify for an 18 X-ray contract, right, as a non-prior service guy, you have to be 20 years of age at the time of shipping to initial active duty training. So what that means is that they can be 19 years and 9 months, and then in 3 months they are going to turn 20. They can enlist, and then they can ship out as soon as they turn 20 years old. So 20 years old is the kind of target that we're looking at for an 18 X-ray contract.
Okay.
When you go to MEPS, you're going to take your ASVAB. That's the aptitude exam. Everybody's, they've seen it, done it, heard of it, right? If they've talked about military service. The requirement on the ASVAB is a 110 general technical score. That is the only requirement on the ASVAB.
So your ASVAB score, right? I know that the main score, that doesn't matter. It's the GT, General Technical, minimum of a 110.
110 General Technical score, yes. And that's 3 categories, right? So that's arithmetic, reasoning, paragraph comprehension, and word knowledge.
Study those 3.
Those are your 3 big ones. There's plenty of programs out there. There's affordable books online. You can get free apps that you can download. Study those 3 categories. So if you're better at reading, you're going to be better at arithmetic reasoning. That's all your word problems, right? And if you have trouble with the word problems, study the word problems and math skills, and that 110 general technical score is going to come up. Once you're done with the ASVAB, we go to the medical examination. And this is the big one, right? So Genesis. So when you talk to a recruiter, right, if it's me, if it's somebody in a different state, be honest and transparent with your medical history with your recruiter. The recruiter you work with, myself or somebody else, will always be able to advise you on what the actual question is, right? So there's interpretations of the questions, and people get concerned about not answering something truthfully. The recruiter will help you understand what each question means and what that means for your medical history.
Okay.
So answering that truthfully is huge. 80% of our applicants last year that enlisted into the Colorado Guard required a medical waiver.
Yep.
It is so common, and especially with Genesis, they're going to find these little things hiding in the deep, dark corners of our medical history, and it's that's going to require a waiver or some kind of disqualification is going to kick off. It's not a big deal. For an 18 X-ray, if they get a medical disqualification, right, it's not a showstopper. It used to be a showstopper for 18 X-ray. It is not anymore.
Okay.
Okay? This is awesome. So we get them to MEPS. They draw a disqualification, right? Let's say your shoulder pops out of socket, or you've had a history of your shoulder popping out of socket. It's no longer a problem, man. I do 20 pull-ups, no problem, super healthy. Good to go. So that is an automatic disqualification at MEPS. So history of unstable shoulders, just going to come up automatically disqualified. We are going to send a waiver for that applicant up to the National Guard Bureau for approval. So the National Guard Bureau is going to review it. They're going to look at some orthopedic notes here from orthopedic doctor. You might have a MEPS consultation that provides some of that insight here if you can't get your own doctor to be able to support that. And then they're going to either approve or deny it. National Guard says, yes, approved, good to go. You now have a waiver to enlist. Hold up, we're not ready yet. So now with the 18 X-ray, now we send an additional waiver to Schoolhouse. And that goes to the John F. Kennedy Special Warfare Center, right? And they're the ones that we push up that additional waiver to get that 18 X-ray contract, because by the medical book at MEPS, they're disqualified, and now they require an additional waiver for that 18 X-ray before they're able to enlist, specifically from the Special Forces Schoolhouse.
Okay. I know you said 20. That's kind of the age range you're looking at. Now, for a lot of the other recruiters throughout the state, we're in and out of your schools. You see us at the lunchrooms. You see us at cooking classes. You see us throughout your community. You see us at parades.
Shout out Sergeant B.
Yeah, Sergeant B, cooking class you were just there.
Yeah, I was there. Great experience. Go CO National Guard. Go back. We have 2 reels there, Sergeant B.
Can we take a pause and pull it up? Can you pull up the... I couldn't believe it. So I almost don't eat MREs, and I'll pack in whatever I have to do for any training exercise. But shout out to the students it was Cherry Creek High School, correct?
Cherry Creek Innovation Campus.
Thank you.
And that was one of my high schools I recruited out of, so that's very near and dear to my heart.
Cherry Creek Innovation Campus. These students. So here's this reel, and Sergeant First Class Brenda Orta out of Aurora, amazing recruiter. Reach out to him. These students here took MREs that normally, we eat cold and we're tired, and it's just fuel. And you look at some of these pictures here of phenomenal meals being made with the ingredients that are issued in the MREs.
Yeah, it's just, and everything looks great, and everything tastes. I was like, these are MRE, and
5/19th. If you want to get a cook, and we can enlist a cook, and they can do this with the MREs while you guys are downrange, I'm sure that it would be.
You know who that cook is there in that uniform, right?
Who's that?
That's one of our cooks. That's Sergeant First Class Myers here from 5/19th.
Hey, look at a wild. That's so funny.
He showed up, man. He and Sergeant First Class Myers took time out of his own schedule to come down and work with the students. And I keep saying, man, he brought the heat, right? So brought some heat to the table.
I love it.
So that is actually one of our SOP enablers doing some great stuff in the community.
So, and the reason why I say this for those students, right, and for those that are watching or listening and say, they're 17 years old, right? You're in your senior year. You are a type A go-getter. You work out. You want to be a Green Beret. This has been an aspiration of yours, but you're 17 or you're 18 years old, and they're going to call me or they're going to call you, Sergeant Klaus, and they're going to say, I want an 18X contract. What is the advice for these 18-year-old individuals to get into the Special Forces community, become a Green Beret, and not have to wait a couple years? Because I think Sergeant Klaus is about to explain why you shouldn't wait.
and don't, right? There's no reason to. When these guys are coming through the SFREs and they get to selection, it's not just it's not a single faceted concept when they're being evaluated, right? So for these guys who are coming in and they're 17 and we talk to plenty, right? Motivated, highly fit, very smart, intelligent, and personable individuals who want to go out and serve their country at the highest capacity. And they're just not there in age yet, right? They're just not hitting that 20-year mark. The concept there is go out and build your resume. Go out and build your foundation as a person, as a soldier, and make yourself as marketable as possible.
What do you mean by that? Enlist?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, good.
Absolutely. There's so many different ways they can do that to expand their skill set as a foundation. So, a lot of guys go in right now will choose to go 11 Bravo and do a traditional 11 Bravo OSET. And the National Guard now allows those guys to volunteer for what's called the Ranger Training Leader Initiative. And that's all done at the Warrior Training Center, which is run by the National Guard at Fort Benning, right? And they go and volunteer for Ranger School, go and pass Ranger School. They can then walk on to Airborne School. Now they have their airborne wings, and then they can volunteer for Air Assault School while they're there, and they can come back with all these great skill sets. And I call them resume builders, right? Because it looks, number one, it looks good on paper, but that's going to make you a more competent individual in the Army, having all
physically,
of the skill sets.
mentally.
Huge.
Come back. You said you'll already get airborne.
Yep.
You will be an 11 Bravo. You'll have Air Assault. Come back with the Colorado National Guard, right? I hope you other states it catches along. I know there's a patch redesign and active duty folks. God bless you, wearing it underneath your collars. But get the Army Mountain Warfare School.
Oh, that's a big one. That's a fun one. Go
get Pathfinder.
Yep.
Go build those skills you're talking about, and then all of a sudden you're 19. You've been serving for a while. You have some money in the bank for retirement. You have some rank on your chest, time in service, and now you go to an SFRE.
Yes. So minimum requirement is, I believe, E3 to hit an SFRE. So you've been in the Guard for a few years, 19 and some change, really erring closer on the side of 20. Got the skills behind you, hit an SFRE, smoke that SFRE, right? And truly show up and show out, right? Those cadre that are out there, they want to see every person. The crazy thing is, right, every cadre that is in the SWID, they all want you to succeed. And so that means that every candidate can show up at 25%, right, of their maximum effort in every single event, and know that the cadre that are assessing them wants them to be successful, but they are truly assessing their ability to be successful at selection, in Q course, and guys that are going to serve a future here, most likely on a team that cadre is going to serve on or lead as a team sergeant at a later point in their career.
So they complete the SFRE. Congratulations, you are one of the individuals that was selected at the end of SFRE. Mm-hmm. What happens?
So great question. So they're going to hit an SFRE 4 days. So Thursday night report, Friday all day, Saturday all day, and then Sunday's out processing. So you're going to be brought in front of the cadre and, given the blessing, right? You are selected, right? Or not. And maybe there's some things that individual needs to work on. If they are selected, the next stage of that is more administrative. So we then have to go through an SF physical, which is done here in the state.
Okay.
There's more specific tests that are done as part of that. So x-rays, blood draws, and then once that SF physical is done and stamped, they send it to schoolhouse, and then a selection date can be chosen for that person. And that selection date, so again, that's the SFAS, that is after the SF physical, and then we go to selection. Now, selection is, and this is always changing. So hopefully by the time somebody's watching this, the dates and the timelines are all about the same. But the last conversation I had here with Fort Bragg was 28 days for selection. So 1 week of ungated events, and then we go into the gated events, meaning things that can drop you if you're not making the standard.
Okay.
Right? So go through that. Come back to Colorado. If they're not airborne qualified, you will go to airborne school.
Okay.
And then after airborne school, you're going to go to Q course.
Okay.
That is where you are going to earn the Green Beret. You are going to, and this is specific to the National Guard. You can choose a language in the National Guard. You're not going to be told which language to
Really?
choose. Yeah, there's preferential languages, so French, Spanish, and I want to say Mandarin is the third, just off the top of my head. Don't quote me on that last one. But French and Spanish are one of the top two. And so you get to choose your language, and then you also get to choose your MOS. Oh, that's cool, right?
Mm-hmm. Delta, Bravo, Echo,
and Charlie. Yeah, and you have to excuse me here because my brain confuses the Charlie and the Echo. Echo, I believe, is the communication sergeant. Charlie is going to be your engineer.
Bravo, weapon sergeant.
And then Delta is your medical sergeant.
Yep.
Right?
So in the National Guard, Colorado National Guard 519th, you can choose your MOS as an 18 series.
100%.
Guaranteed?
Yes, guaranteed. Yeah. So that's different than like the active duty component, and it's just what it is, right? Active duty, you take an aptitude test at Q course, at the start of Q course, and then you are assigned an MOS at that time.
Okay.
Right? And of course, anything can change here. So hopefully by the time somebody watches this, that rule hasn't changed. Sure. But that is the current rule as it stands. Guys can show up and choose.
And Colorado National Guard 519th, we have, the teams, every team, we have all positions available for MOSs, whether you want to be a weapon sergeant, engineer, go blow stuff up, medical, communication sergeant, or operations and intel for Fox.
Yeah, and Fox you're not going to choose up front. So Fox is an experienced guy on a team. He can go and reclass to being an intel and operations sergeant. So you will find that the Fox is going to be one of your most experienced guys on the team.
Like a team sergeant.
Team sergeant, and they're gonna go and they're gonna get reclassed into that 18 Fox position because it's a different pool of knowledge and experiences that are required to be assigned to an 18 Fox.
Tracking. Okay, so you're confirmed with your MOS. Q course. Language school, is that after Q course?
Yes. So, and the phases of Q course changes all the time. So, you have your different phases. So you have small unit tactics, which currently is the front-loaded portion of Q course. So small unit tactics is done first. They call it like a mini ranger school.
Okay.
Right. Definitely different level of skill sets here and physical requirements. But
sure.
The small unit tactics is first. If I remember right, it goes into SEER, which is your survival, evasion, resistance, escape. Yep.
Okay.
So that is a very challenging part of the course as well, because you're going, again, as an 18 series guy, you're going to go behind into foreign lands,
yep.
right? And the risk of capture, SEER is a requirement here as a skill set to have in their toolbox. Once they're done with that, then they go into their MOS qualification, right? And this is where things get a little bit kind of wiry as far as time goes. Charlie, Bravo, and Echo, respectively, are supposed to be about 52 weeks of total training.
Okay.
To be qualified, and then it's on paper it's an additional 4 weeks as an 18 Delta. The phases in between those, it starts to get a little bit choppy as far as how much time you're going to spend in the queue between those three main MOSs in the Delta course. So traditionally, it's going to be a lot longer in the Delta course, just because of the breaks in between the phases. And so that's where guys, when they start deciding on an MOS. Number one, Delta requires a different level of aptitude for the medical side. So you see a lot of guys that are coming in that have medical experience, EMT, some kind of paramedic certification. They might have even gone to medical school.
Sure.
Right? Surgeons, doctors, right? And that gives them a leg up in some ways because of the amount of information the 18 Deltas are expected to consume in a very short amount of time on the medical side. So it is a dramatically different course because of the book requirements or the educational requirements that they're going to partake in as part of that Q course.
Right.
Right.
All right. So they graduate language school, right? What if they already know a language? That's one of the...
That's a great question. Yeah, I get that one a lot. So you can have a guy come in and be proficient, and he can test out of language school. My challenge, and this is a piece of little nugget that's been put out here into the internet for as long as I've been researching this topic, is you can test out of a language
on a D-Lab.
D-Lab, yes, and I think there's another test at Bragg that you have to test that you can test out on. Don't quote me on that one.
Okay.
But you can test out on your aptitude exam. So if you get qualified, you can test out and not have to attend language, and then you're done. But if you go through and you're already proficient in, like, let's say Spanish, well, 19th group is also prioritizing French. So if you go through, get qualified, you already know one language, go get proficient in another language.
Sure.
Now
Army's going to pay for it.
Army's going to pay for it. Yeah, you're in language school for that time. The training's done, and now you have another skill set that you can bring to a team.
Okay.
Make yourself as valuable as possible to that team.
Okay. So all the training is done.
Yep.
They come back to a team here, 519th in Colorado at Watkins.
Yep.
And
teams are down at Carson.
Oh, excuse me.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they come back. Is it a traditional, and we have a lot of applicants that are reaching out and asking about coming into the team or to the Guard, into the Special Forces community. A normal guardsman in any MOS for the 90 career fields we have besides Special Forces, is it 1 weekend a month, 2 weeks a year as a Green Beret?
That's the on paper, right? I think you can expect that, depending on, just like any other unit, depending on op tempo, right? So if these guys are getting ready to deploy, you can expect instead of 3-day drill weekends, you can expect 4 or 5-day drill weekends. Traditional AT is about 2 weeks. Depending on what the operation is, you might see a 3-week annual training, but that's just the same as any other unit in the Guard. It's just operational requirements and op tempo. The biggest piece of feedback I get from my GBs, right, my Green Berets that pass along these experiences for me to share, is you're going to be as busy as you want to be as a fully qualified Green Beret in the National Guard. This is huge. That means that when you are a fully qualified GB, you are trying to improve yourself in the civilian side and the military side as much as you can. So you're going to school, you're getting certifications, you're volunteering to go to military schools, and you're going to go to as much as you can handle and as much as the budget can handle.
Okay.
At the same turn is you can also volunteer for deployments. So a sister company's going and deploying someplace and they need a qualified 18 Charlie to come along with them. Hey, I want to go on a deployment. Raise your hand. Go on a deployment, and as long as you're a squared away dude, and your command signs off on it, you can volunteer for those additional deployments and get that additional experience in the Guard.
Okay. But it is a traditional National Guard unit.
Yes.
With the drill weekends and the annual training. But there are other opportunities that are going to be more prevalent than a traditional unit here in Colorado.
100%.
Okay.
100%.
So we talked about prior service. We talked about non-prior service. We talked about our youngs. Now what about our olds? For us as regular recruiters, kind of cutoff age, you're looking at 40, right? That's kind of 40 years old is what we're looking at. If you want to come in and be, name the MOS, whatever job you want to do here, non-special forces. What's kind of the cutoff age for special forces?
So, and this is again from the ether. I haven't had anybody above the age of 40 join yet. I've got a 42-year-old right now who's waiting some waivers.
Amazing.
So he'll need 2 waivers. He'll need a waiver first off, Schoolhouse 35 and above requires a waiver to attend selection.
Okay.
So again, on the internet, there are stories about 49-year-olds going through selection. Yeah. Yeah, and that's, again, motivated dude. If he's got the skill set to bring to the table.
Yep, good for them.
100%. I think it's there's not really a cutoff per se. There's waivers for a lot of things out there, but you have to know the training requirements past selection. 1.5 years in Q course for you to become a qualified GB at a minimum.
Okay.
So going to selection, getting your Q course date, and now you're 52 years old if you go through at 49, and now you're a 52-year-old on a team. Can you do it? Absolutely. But that's something that each individual has to look at for themselves and make that determination. But don't let age be the factor that says, I'm not going to do this.
Amen. It's never too late.
It's never too late. And I think the big thing that you said earlier, I really like this. We talked about legacy, but it could be someday, or it could be, one day, or it could be day one. If it is your dream, if it is your aspiration here, there's waivers for a ton of things out there, right? And if you have the drive, the commitment, and you have the demonstrated potential to serve in this position as a GB, start working yesterday.
And I've heard it from you. I want to emphasize on what you just said. I know you and your team will work day and night and jump through every hoop and process every waiver that you are eligible for if you want to make this happen. But it's on you. Your phones, I've seen you at the office. I've seen you on your personal time. I've seen the rest of your staff, their personal time.
Yes.
Do not waste their time because their emails are hundreds daily. Their phones are blowing off because everybody wants it. So if this is you, we are going to share Sergeant Klaus's contact information. He will work as hard as you want. If you start ghosting, if you start not getting things back in a timely manner, if you cannot prove to handle simple tasks before that training, they will not pursue you, right? Yep. So it's up to you. Now, the last thing I kind of want to talk about before I pass it off to you is there are some amazing things, and I know Colorado's worked with an individual, and I'll let you talk about this individual, and some programs. So if this is you, especially if you're on the younger side and you're in high school and you are 17, 18, 16, 15, what are some opportunities that the 519th and Colorado National Guard have done to let you come get a taste of what you're about to go experience for many years?
I think what you're asking about is like SFRE and and a big one with that. Thank you. I'm glad you asked that. Thank you. So 519th is, and this is the first time I've seen this in recruiting, and I've seen variations of it, but not to this capacity with the Special Forces recruiting. So 519th is conducting an initiative where we are bringing a mobile SFRE to Wisconsin. Most of my applicants that I speak to on a daily basis are from out of state. So we are bringing, instead of bringing you guys to us, we are bringing the mobile SFRE Central here to Wisconsin. So the SFRE currently slated for June 19th through 22nd in the area vicinity of Madison, Wisconsin, and Milwaukee.
Yep.
If you are a prior service guy or you're currently serving National Guardsman and you're ready to test yourself and get selected, this is the event that you want to sign up for and that you want to go to.
So there it is on the screen, right? And we'll say the dates again, June 19th to the 22nd. That's this year, 2025, Madison, Wisconsin. There's your contact information. There's another event. So this is for currently serving and prior service individuals. There's another event that you may not have served a day in your life, but you want the SOF. Mr. Jason, I would like you to talk about. Is that still a thing right now going on?
So we don't have anything solidified in the books. We have some things working with SoCom Athlete is a company organization that we've worked with in the past, and Jason Sweet does a great job of bringing guys in off the street who are trying out for various SOF organizations. Jason last year partnered with us and did an SF challenge, which is a specific evaluation.
There he is. Shout out Jason. Yeah, that was an amazing event that you ran.
It was huge.
And so it was big. This may be an opportunity this year, next year, moving forward.
Yeah, we're trying to set something up here for later in the fiscal year. I think we're looking at is September. It's either August or September is the potential. Again, nothing solidified with that. Going back quickly to the Madison event, we are going to have an event there. It's going to be a one-day Special Forces experience, and that is going to be for our non-prior service folks that are wanting to try and see what that experience. And the word that I like to use here is exposure. Expose yourself to being assessed. The challenges associated with selection and with an SFRE, we are bringing that into the civilian as part of the civilian population as part of the Wisconsin Mobile SFRE.
Okay.
It is going to be a one-day event, either on the front end or back end of that, and some of the details on timings being worked out. But that is a way that we are bringing civilians to come in and gain that exposure and experience. Depending on, here's the crazy thing. I've talked to these GBs. Again, I can't stress enough the level of experience, commitment, and passion they're bringing to the table. They're willing to put forth their personal time here to be mentors to the guys that put forth the time here to get qualified to join.
Okay.
So what that means is if a guy comes in and does the Wisconsin SFRE, and they've gone to MEPS, they've done their ASVAB, they've already been qualified here and gotten their physical done, we are getting them in front of GBs as mentors prior to the event even kicking off.
Good.
And you're going to get additional exposure.
They're going to see your face.
And they're going to be there with you, and you're going to get different mentorship level at the event.
Yep.
So you're going through these challenges, you're tired, you're getting smoked, but you're going to get that interaction with that GB to gain the insight to understand what is happening and what you need to do to get yourself to that next level, apart from the person who might just show up and just, be wanting to kind of see what's going on and not do any of the front end work required to actually join.
Yep. Now for those, we're going to put it out, and Sergeant Klaus talked about it, right? Get in. If you are young, right, and I'm talking to you 15, 16, 17-year-olds right now watching, and you're a stud, and you have what it takes, okay, don't stop. Go call, go to CO Guard, find your local recruiter, right? Google Colorado Army National Guard recruiting. Find that recruiter in the state of Colorado. If you're in Douglas County, Castle Rock, Parker, reach out to myself, Staff Sergeant Norcross. My office is in Parker, but right here. So,
yeah, coarmyguard.com.
coarmyguard.com.
If you go to here on the menu, you'll have Special Forces here.
Or you can just find your recruiter, type in your area.
Yeah.
Your recruiter, our recruiters here are all voluntary recruiters, right? And I can't stress that enough. I know we've talked about that on other podcasts, right? Active duty, these individuals are forced to, at one point or another in their career, do recruiting, right? And so for us, the recruiters here in Colorado, we all volunteer to do this. We believe in it.
Hey, who's that handsome guy?
We stand by our work. So yeah, here's Sergeant Klaus's page, right? And so you would type in your zip code, find your recruiter, and go say, hey, I'm 16, I'm 17, I'm going to be a Green Beret one day, but let me go ahead and join. I'm going to be an 11 Bravo first. I'm going to get all those badges and tabs that Sergeant Klaus told me to go get, and I'm going to continue training, and then I'm going to go to the SFRE and try out for 5/19th. Do not wait, right? That's my biggest regret is I joined at 21, and I wish that I would have joined at 16 years, 11 months and had that much more rank and that much more money and that much more time in service and retiring in a couple years, right? So before we kind of close it up here, is what else did you want to talk about, Sergeant Klaus? Is there anything that we missed or that 5/19th would like to pass off to the Colorado population or the nation?
Yeah, I think, I mean, number one, thank you again for having me on the show here. Sharing my story, being able to share, again, the passion and dedication of the guys that I work with on from the 5/19th. It is invaluable to me to be able to share those experiences, and it is truly an honor. And I feel very fortunate to be able to be in the position that I'm in right now, working with these guys and bringing the next generation of Green Berets. And I've actually been fortunate enough to see a couple of my 18 X-rays hit selection and get selected, and now waiting for their Q Corps start date. So I'm very, very proud of what those guys are doing. It's incredible to see it happen. The biggest thing I can share with you is, and this is something directly from my cadre, is go out and earn your purpose. It is through trying, dedication, failing, and then learning and coming back and trying again and succeeding that we find the gaps in ourself and who we are, and we are made strong. We can shed those old parts of ourselves. We can grow, learn, and develop. And watching the cadre this morning, and they showed up at 7:30 and stood. It was like 25 of them went around in the room and introduced themselves to a room of 20-something candidates. It was almost over a 1-1. It was almost a 1-1. I've never seen that before in SFRE. We have this huge dawning of culture happening at the SWID. It's just going to be incredible to watch unfold. And the cadre said, and straight up, my NCOIC said it to everybody. He says, "We want you all to succeed. No matter what you do and earn at the end of this, you will earn something learned about yourself. You will come home a better person. You will go to your unit a better soldier. You will go to work next week as a better employee simply because you showed up this weekend, you gave it your absolute best, and you will learn something about yourself that will make you a better part in whatever area of life you were trying to get better at." And that culture of constantly improving yourself and never being satisfied.
Right.
That drive is something that can be learned, but it is something that you have to chase after, and you have to never be willing to settle or quit to be able to get there. Very proud to, again, serve with these guys, and I continue to try to live up to the position that I'm in, the rank that I'm in, and the culture that I'm working alongside of. And I challenge each person that's watching this podcast to chase after the same thing and be the best version of yourself that you can be, because truly anybody that walks in and watches this video can chase after whatever it is they want, right? It's one day or it's day one. Today's day one.
Awesome. So if you're watching right now, be a better person. Go below, hit the notifications bell, subscribe.
Yes.
Hit the like button, and if you have questions or whatever, throw it down below in the box. Sergeant Klaus will be in there, and even if he's busy, I'll send it to him, his questions. We will forward that to him. So again, like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. So that will help you to become a better person. Facebook and Instagram, CO National Guard, CO National Guard. Before we wrap up.
Yeah, can't stress it enough. And if you're watching and you know somebody, right, and they talk the talk, oh, I'm going to do it, send them this video. It's got everything they need.
100%.
And then if they still want to talk the talk, if you want to stand shoulder to shoulder, and again, just shout out 519th with the tip of the spear and perform and walk on the shoulders of giants that came before that organization. Sergeant Klaus's phone number's on there.
Yeah.
So
and the sign up for the Wisconsin Challenge, that's also going to be included with the video link as well.
Yeah,
down below.
Yeah,
we'll
if you want more information, below on the description, we'll have the link to sign up to the Madison, Wisconsin direct contact with Sergeant Klaus. His
100%.
his email and phone number will be down in the description.
Thank you for coming in, Sergeant Klaus, on your time. I know, again, you're so busy and doing the Lord's work, so your time is very valuable, so thank you for coming in. It means a lot.
Thanks for the invite, man.
We always end this with two things, right? So I'm sure you've seen it. One is a piece of advice that you've gotten, or a quote, or some something you want to share to our fellow service members, or to the Colorado public, right? Something that you've taken from your career. And then number two, who are you going to challenge to come on the podcast next?
So something I've had to work really hard at for myself is, the shedding of old selves and bad habits. But a good piece of advice I recently got here from a leader of mine was comparison is the thief of happiness. Comparing myself to others and their performance or their standards, that robs me of my joy. The only thing I can do is be the best possible version of myself every single day. And the way I show up to things, it will dictate how things will move forward for me. So that's the best piece of advice I think I've got right now,
Amen.
man.
That's great.
I love it.
Huge. Yeah.
Who are you calling out? Who's going to come on?
Oh, geez. Let's, I'm really hoping to get some retired GBs on here. I don't have anybody by name yet, but I do think, I think Master Sergeant Jake Kuzma has got some cool stories to share from the guard side. Actually, my recruiter coming into the guard, and now my my current supervisor. Shout out to Master Sergeant Kuzma.
And he used to be my boss in marketing too. So.
Yeah.
All right, Master Sergeant Kuzma, you're next.
Yeah, Sergeant Kuzma, come on to the show, man. Show us what you got.
All right. Call Sergeant Klaus if you think you have what it takes. Thank you so much. Again, episode number 24.
24.
Beautiful new studio. Thanks to Officer Candidate Rivera, who's going to soon be pinning and commissioning.
Hope not that soon. Next year.
Hey, that's soon.
Yeah, it will go fast.
You're living in the moment. So thank you guys. Like you said, like, comment, share, subscribe, and go be the best version that you can be.
Perfect.
Thanks.
And again, this is day one.
Day one or one day.
Perfect.
Day one or one day.
Day one. Got me hyped up, huh?